Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dan on Sports. Well, I vowed I would not read any more books about George Steinbrenner and the New York Yankees. So what have I done? I'm reading another book about George Steinbrenner and the New York Yankees. And I've read some good ones over the years. I mean, Bill Madden, the writer who's in the Writers' Wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame, wrote for the New York Daily News, still does part-time. He has written very definitive books about Steinbrenner and his ownership of the Yankees. And, I've read them all, and I'm saying, what more can I learn reading another book about the Steinbrenner's ownership of the New York Yankees? And yet, here I am reading Mike Vaccaro's latest book, and this one is The Bosses of the Bronx. I'm about halfway through. It's a tremendous book, and I'm learning a number of things. And remember, I lived through this era when Steinbrenner bought the Yankees, the announcement being made in January of 1973, and people were wondering, who is George Steinbrenner? Why would CBS sell the Yankees to a group headed by a George Steinbrenner, a businessman from Ohio? What's up with that? But I lived that. I remember the news conference, and I lived through a lot of what Vaccaro has written about in the book, and yet I'm learning new things. And that's the focus of today's video/podcast, the fact that Willie Mays, think about this for just a moment, Willie Mays almost became manager of the New York Yankees. And it's appropriate, I guess, that I'm doing this video along the lines of that subject because the Yankees are opening their 2026 season out in San Francisco against the Giants. Willie Mays, San Francisco Giants. Before that, the New York Giants, and then he wrapped his career up with the New York Mets. But how did Willie Mays almost become manager of the New York Yankees? Well, Steinbrenner and his group bought the Yankees from CBS for a little over $8 million. And even though the Yankees were going through hard times, people were wondering, how could this group get the Yankees for this price? And it turns out Lehman Brothers, an investment bank, was willing to back other groups who wanted to buy the Yankees and, in fact, offered Bill Paley, who was the chairman of CBS, Bill Paley offered Paley between $13 and $14 million to buy the New York Yankees. This is all in Vaccaro's book. And again, I'm talking round figures here, but between $13 and $14 million, and Steinbrenner comes away with buying the Yankees for a little more than $8 million, of which he put up something like just $168,000 of his own money. But Herman Franks was going to lead this group. Now, who was Herman Franks? Herman Franks was a baseball lifer. Herman Franks played for the New York Giants. Herman Franks managed the San Francisco Giants. Herman Franks managed the San Francisco Giants with Willie Mays as his center fielder. Herman Franks had a favorite player. That favorite player was Willie Mays. So it stood to reason that if Franks took over control of the New York Yankees, and it appeared as if Lehman Brothers was going to buy the Yankees from Bill Paley and CBS, Franks was going to run the show, and in fact, he thought he was going to run the show. They thought the deal come December of 72 might be done. Franks would be in charge, and he asked Mays, would you manage the New York Yankees? And if Mays became the manager of the New York Yankees, he would be the first African-American manager in Major League Baseball history. Mays said, yes, I would. I would manage the New York Yankees if this comes to pass and you offered me the job. Well, here was the problem, and I remember this so much. I mean, there was talk, you need a new Yankee Stadium, and people were saying, well, you can't tear Yankee Stadium down, renovate it. Renovate it from the bones up and make it a modern ballpark with no obstructed views, but you can't tear the facility down. So you had that battle going on. Then you had New Jersey out there trying to lure the Yankees to the Meadowlands, as they had lured the Giants. And I'm telling you, it came close to happening. It came very close that the New York Yankees were going to be playing their games in a brand spanking new stadium in New Jersey, the Meadowlands, right next to where Giant Stadium was being built. It came very close. And Lehman Brothers did not rule out, if it bought the team, moving the Yankees to the Meadowlands. That was not ruled out. Lehman Brothers said, well, we would very much consider it. And it cost them the team. Because according to Vaccaro's book, William Paley said, I don't care. I'll settle for $8 million rather than the $13 or $14 million, meaning he settled for $5 to $6 million less. And why did he say that? Because Paley said he did not want to be the one known as the reason the Yankees left New York, even though they were just going across the George Washington Bridge or the Lincoln Tunnel to New Jersey. He didn't want to be the one. He did not want to become baseball's next Walter O'Malley, is what it came down to. And so that is the reason that George Steinbrenner ended up owning the New York Yankees. But otherwise, Lehman Brothers and that ownership group, led by Herman Franks, they were going to get the New York Yankees, and Willie Mays could very well have been the next manager of the New York Yankees. Willie Mays, think about that. But it's a tremendous book, and it just was published on Tuesday, and I'm reading it. It's a nice read, and like I said, I'm familiar with many of the storylines, but what happens here is that Vaccaro provides some information that I didn't even know about, and I've been following the New York Yankees since I was a kid, and it's all in the book. If you're a Yankees fan who is familiar with some of this, or if you're a newer Yankees fan, not familiar of the history of the Yankees, then this is the book by Michael Vaccaro, The Bosses of the Bronx. Very fascinating, but Willie Mays came that close to being the manager of the New York Yankees. Think about that for just a moment. That's going to do it for Dan on Sports. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you very much for subscribing to my newsletter. And to do that, all you have to do is go to danonsports.com. See you later.